Dr. Dylan and I are going to be speaking on basically jungle SOT. I think one of the fun things about Dylan and I is we tend to see things from very different perspectives, but we always end up talking about the same things just from our own lenses of life. So I think this will be a good exploration through, wherever you stand in chiropractic to have some insightful things come in both directions. From an SOT perspective, obviously with the name of the technique being sacro-occipital technique, we're going to be focusing on sacrum and occiput. I will be leading predominantly sacrum. Dylan will be taking occiput. First thing that I want to talk about is with the body being a balancing of multiple structures. So you have the biotensegrity system as a container, as a basically an architecture for supporting and manifesting the nervous system. When you talk about occiput and sacrum, you're going to be tethered by the meningeal system. So it is literally the top and the bottom anchorage pole for the nervous system. With the nervous system being basically a giant antenna because it is a electromagnetic receiver and conductor. When we consider the neuromechanics of the system, I'm sure all of you guys from neurophys class remember that there's voltage-gated channels through the nervous system. That's predominantly how nerves work. Did you know that there's tension-gated channels? Have you ever heard of that? So there are tension-gated channels on cell walls and especially on neurons that when neurons are put under tension, under stress, they transfer ions differently and therefore have a different baseline threshold for conducting nervous system information. So your action potentials are going to strike faster. You're going to have a nervous system that is excessively responsive and gives off higher level of stimuli. So this is going to be that buzz, that anxious, sympathetic tone. So if we think about the nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord as being suspended in the spinal canal via the meningeal system and this stacked vertebral column, what happens when the top and the bottom of this antenna become distorted in such a way that the voltage-gated channels are now under constant tension? We have a nervous system that has a higher baseline firing rate. It is now going to be overexcitable to stimuli coming in, especially because the nervous system is predominantly focused on safety and protection. Overexcitation is going to trigger protection. Okay, so what is more valuable in this world? A person that is running around in fear, in guarded, in protection, or is more open, is more explorative, is more playful? I think we can all answer that one. Okay, so we're going to be taking these concepts from a more like philosophical talking standpoint and showing how you can address it anytime, anywhere with what we call jungle adjusting. When we get into it, I'll be speaking more of like what my hand is doing, what my body's doing. But the biggest thing that I think is important when you don't have a table, when you don't have some of your tools, is the float state becomes all of it. So if you are used to taking a joint to tension and then putting an impulse into it and creating cavitation, that is not going to work as well when you're in a jungle adjusting situation, a no table. So we are going to work on how do we create the most ease, how do we create the most float, how do we let the entire neuromuscular fascial system let go of that brace and be in a state of float, so that if you think about that neuromyofascial system being this three-dimensional architecture web that holds the joint, if we can get it to let go of the joint and the joint can now float in a state of little to no tension, it takes less of a magnitude of impulse to create change. Okay? So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mehta.
Wow, that was really awesome. I'm sitting over here just like translating everything you're saying about your view into SOT into my exact same view into SOT, just through a totally different window. Recognizing that it's all tone, and especially with jungle adjusting. With jungle adjusting and with tone, you're playing the body like an instrument or dancing with the body with a very different dance floor, right? And so the way that you're going to find that float state is by first just understanding from a very global kind of outside, as extended out to the edges as possible, understanding of the tension patterns within the system. And then as you follow those tension patterns into the system, chiropractically, you listen for how those tension, compression, distortion, torsion patterns are anchoring into the sacrum and the occiput. Because when you don't have a table and all you have is the floor, the best way you can serve someone is just to tune the tone of their system. And if you can just boil it down to, if I can get occiput and sacrum set and in resonant tone, I can allow the body to do the rest. So what this means is, as you're approaching this person, you can do this on your table as well, but as you're approaching this person, tune your dial and your awareness into distortion at occiput, distortion at sacrum. What is the relationship between the two? And what do you learn about the whole distortion pattern between the two and beyond? Because if you can feel that distortion pattern, then as you're using the floor, whether it's seated, on the side, prone, supine, it's going to be creative, but that's how you will find a global float state where you can still create the tonal engagement to match tone release, and it's easeful, and it can be done anywhere. We're at Atlas Wyld, and this is what Bonham and I do at festivals. Like, we're dancing all day long. It's damn near once a set that it's like, yo, can you get me? And we either sit down, lay the pashmina out, because you can always just tune the vessel. And then why does this matter? When the vessel is fully tuned, it is not only adapting to stressors at its best, but from a more empowering state, it's also merely expressing at its best. Atlas Wyld is all about expression. We talk as chiropractors about optimization. Are we actually looking to serve someone's body in a sense of efforting to optimize the tone of the system with the intention such that they can go and live their life as clear and connected, abundant, and expressive as possible? Or are we just trying to holistically remove the problem? How big is your intention with it? The creativity of the jungle adjusting puts you in a more neuroplastic state because you're out of pattern. When you're adjusting without your table, everything is different because now you have to listen differently. Phil's been practicing longer than some of you have been alive. But when he does jungle adjusting, he'll be adjusting differently. He'll be listening differently. Different things will come up because he's not at his table in his zone. It's like, okay, my spidey senses really need to listen. So listen to what you're feeling. Follow it all the way into the sacrum, the occiput, how they mirror one another, how that distortion pattern is related between the two, and you'll figure out how you can set this person up and deliver ease in a super dynamic way.
Can I give an analogy here?
Yeah.
I want to take one. He prompted a thought on expression, and then I want to give an analogy. Expression is your nervous system's capacity to be creative in response to the environment that you're in. And again, based on what I was just saying, was if your nervous system is stuck in a state of protection, fear, guardedness, creativity is not a priority. So when you are in an environment that can be either over or under stimulating, and your nervous system is not able to fully appreciate that environment and recognize safety and then allow for expression, that is where expression breaks down in our cultures and our society. That's why people act so reserved. For an analogy for jungle adjusting, I want you to think about when somebody plays the guitar, because as you strum that string and it carries a vibratory tone up the neck of the guitar, not only does it matter how the strings are tuned at the top for the tension that they're carrying, for the waveform that can be created, but as somebody starts to play the guitar, they are hitting different notes by stopping that vibratory potential at certain wavelengths, at certain distances. This is the same thing when you are, depending on where you are in your adjusting, but I invite you to explore further than you've gone. When you are starting to stack a system, especially at the poles of the system, I will be able to recognize and tune, okay, from the analogy of the guitar, let's use the neck frets as vertebra. When I'm starting to stack this sacrum, do I feel like there is a finger held down on the chord at T8? And now can I balance what I'm feeling in the geometry and the tensegrity of the sacrum up to T8 to create a float state at both areas? That is going to allow that wave, because it is in the float, it is not being trapped by a distortion pattern. That's going to allow the wave to go up the spinal cord and through that segment, through the nervous system. So the farther that you can stack that as you are setting somebody up, either in side posture or for occiput, the more that that impulse wave is going to be able to travel through the nervous system with ease.
Yes.
Okay? Anything else?
You want to show them how to start with my sacrum?
Sure. So you can, I know that a lot of us get very used to palpating people face down. You can palpate in side posture. So go ahead. You face me.
Sitting.
You going first, buddy?
Where am I going to go?
You can go on your side facing me. All right, so if I stack Dylan fairly neutral, I can bend both legs so that I get an even kind of tone in his system. I can come in here and I can just start adding motion to his pelvis in the same way that you would whenever he's on his stomach. So just by compressing and rolling in circles and adding pressure to me, I can feel this is not translating through as well here, and it's not translating through as well here. As just a reference point, generally, top of the sacrum is going to be more receptive to push, bottom of the sacrum is going to be more receptive to pull, but that is not an absolute, okay? So from here, I can now palpate along the SI joint and find the exact node point, the exact segment along that joint that is not moving with that. And now I can start to play in the different coordinates of movement. So we have up and down, we've got side to side, and then we're gonna have some torque. So I feel it open up more when it comes towards me, closes down a little bit there. There's not a great reference point, it's just almost like a little bit of pull, and then from a spin, it's gonna be open here. So my adjustment's gonna come towards me, slightly down, and spin this way. And you can almost see how that has fully unlocked that lack of motion there, okay? From this other side, I'm going to, because it's upper SI joint, I'm also going to consider the lumbars in this. What happens to the lumbar whenever I start to unwind the SI joint like I was on this upside? I can feel like L4 starts to translate, but L5 is having a lot of trouble translating forward as I unwind this. So I imagine that the upper SI subluxation and the L5 subluxation are linked a little bit. They're kind of tied together. So what can I do to help this open? L5 wants to translate superiorly. That gives it the most ease and away. Sacrum wants to also translate superiorly and away. So that there's agreement there. I can probably clear those together. So this one is going to go superior down towards the floor and a clockwise torque. So this is where I now have my coordinates for how I need to adjust him. And in some ways, having him already in side posture helps, because if you've ever noticed, if you have somebody prone and then you put them on their side, sometimes it doesn't feel the same. The hardest thing here is going to be this knee, because you don't have the space, so that it's a little bit harder to float the system. I'm going to use my legs to create any kind of lift that I need to, and then I'm going to translate his body basically completely back towards me. So I'll set him up side posture how I normally would. I've got my knee basically right next to his stomach so I can get the most leverage. And now I'm going to start compressing to create that ease. Once I create enough ease here, now I'm looking to the rest of the system. So this is my upper fret hand. Okay? So what can I do here to create more float along the spine? I'm opening up mid-thoracics now. Look at that. So this was more or less like end range, if you will. If I translate, look at that. Now he's floating, okay? So if I hold that, I don't have to hold this anymore. I'm gonna give his body a little room with my knee. Now I just have to float his system enough that I can feel like my impulse is gonna be able to go somewhere, because right now I'm hitting the ground. There's a space right there. This is another really nice trick. I'm gonna give myself some room. There we go, right there. Straight through. That one's gonna need the lumbar there is kind of stopping that one from moving as much as I want. This one's gonna be that pull with the clockwise torque down, and I'm really gonna let his knee slide through, because I need that sacrum to tuck right there. Go ahead and the other way. Head up here, so we can keep the back of you to them. So because his lumbar needs a little bit of room, I'm gonna now take his leg through mine. Especially when you're doing this, you get a lot more intimate. You can help me? Can you help me? So I can now use this leg as a steering.
I've also got that transition over here. All right.
So this is really tight, arm over your head. This is really tight into his shoulder. So tuning arm right there. Now I just need room for me to drop right there. But it's the float, because if you can feel his osseous system hitting the ground and like that bottoming out, you're not going to clear the segment because all the force is going to hit that solid space. You have to find where's the float in the roll. So play with the leg, play with the arm. You're playing the guitar. Okay, so these are your fretting, and then your adjustment is finding where you need to hit that tune in the system. Cool? Any questions there?
Beautiful.
Sick.
Do you want to find a partner and play with that?
Yeah, why don't you guys go ahead through, let me see what timing we got.
It's 9:30.
Why don't you go over occiput, and then we'll give space for play afterwards.
Okay. All right.
Because I want you guys to be able to assess the system from top and bottom and figure out where the most, I would like to find primary. So would you approach occiput or sacrum first?
Okay. Do you want me to? I'll talk occiput, and then we can both jump into primary. I'm gonna for timing, so I want to make sure you guys have time to play with this. I'm gonna try to go through occiput pretty quickly.
Come here, bud.
We're gonna analyze occiput seated. You can you should probably turn the other way.
Backwards?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't want to sit with me.
You want to sit with Bonham? Nope. Okay.
Let's sit here.
You can analyze occiput seated, and when it's seated, you can really listen to the tone of how the mid-back and core is pulling or tractioning into the system. If someone has shit posture or isn't engaged with their core, it's going to show up the most when they're sitting, right? People just like lose all of it when they're sitting because people are typically relaxed when they're sitting. So the second that you have someone sit down here, you can even just like have them relax and see where do they fall. Where they fall is going to show you where that occiput tends to want to sit, and it's also going to start to inform you on where that tonage is going to be, right? For Bonham, he holds, Bonham's better than some of us, me being one of them. He holds good posture. And so his occiput often stays lifted up. What I can feel immediately, right as I come off the rib of the rim of the occiput, right off the edge here, I'm just immediately feeling, where is there a higher tone? As gentle and superficial as I can possibly feel, because I just want to like gain context from the outside in. I can gather that here, then I can come down, I can kind of do a couple scans, and I can say, okay, when he sits, he unloads this way, his rib cage falls back here. The shoulders don't fall forward a ton, but there is a bit of compression here. It wraps around into his clavicle and his sternum more than it is up here. So that's going to tell me when I'm starting to set this up, regardless of which side I'm going to, I'm going to make sure that I get him to lift that lower sternum just to engage the low back, and then lift the rib cage by lifting the occiput here. Right there is how I'm going to get the occiput to balance and open. Now that I feel it balance and open, I can then feel, okay, when it's open, what's the tone of the system now? Still more on the right than the left. This time I can feel, where is it within the joint? We've got the whole condyle, that groove, right? Is it more on the outside? Is it deep inside? Is it medial? Is it anterior? Like, where does it feel like it's holding a distortion pattern as he goes from a disengaged posture to an engaged posture? Make sense? Go ahead and relax again.
Can I add to that for a second?
Sure.
So your body will always try to balance tension and compression. That's a tensegrity rule. So when somebody falls into flexion and gets that posterior rib rock, like most people do, their whole thoracic spine is in tension. So their lumbar spine and their especially their lower cervical spine is automatically going to be in compression. Then you'll see the drift forward as the shoulders round forward. You create compression in the front of the body, compression in the neck, and then you're typically going to get some balance of tension in the occiput. That's because when your ligaments go under tension, your body will recruit the muscles to offset that load, if anybody cares.
I like that. Okay. So notice, I didn't need to like jaw jut and do a million crazy things within his system to find out where I'm going, because I want to be adjusting with a fine-tooth comb. I want to be like feeling the subtleties. So if you want to feel the subtleties and be able to adjust through the subtleties, you have to analyze or discover through the subtleties. If your discovery is only super heavy-handed, you can't expect to possibly be able to find that setup in a subtle way because you don't have reference for what you need to set up. So you must go into this subtly. Now as I'm in here, I can slide my finger off and say, okay, are we more medial or lateral? And it's the entire posterior rim. I can start to play just a little bit with this. Freedom over here, lockdown over here. All right, it's right there. As you're setting up on this, you're going to want to make sure that your adjusting foot is not behind their spine. It needs to be beyond that. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make, because then when I go to set up on him and I lean him over, I'll be leaning over too far. You lose all your power if you're over your knee. You need to be behind your knee. So your knee's going to be back here. I also recommend starting kneeling like this because you don't want to sit in this for too long. You are going to be really low with this. Another big mistake that I'll see is being too high up and kind of connecting with the head like this. If there's a wedge between the side of their head and your sternum, it's going to be more uncomfortable. If you can get to a place where their parietal bone and likely their ear a little bit, hold on, Bubba, is parallel with the side of their head, and you can really bear hug into it, you'll be able to hold them tight enough that they can actually let go. This is a super connected adjustment, just like that sacrum, just like the sacrum Bonham just taught. You have to be all over the person. You have to make sure that they feel held. I almost like give the analogy of like, become the snake, become the anaconda, really hold them in. It's not weird. It helps them feel safe. Mm-hmm. You have to be super tight. So you're going to see my legs hugging him. You're going to see my entire torso holding his head. When he feels like I got him, I can micro tune my hand and I'll talk through what I'm doing. And then I can soften everything where I take my constriction and I just let go of the constriction a little bit. I allow him to drop into that. As he drops into it, it floats, you go through. That's how you give a clean occiput lift. That's how you don't jam people's stuff. And how you become really confident doing this all the time. You bring them to right where they're on the edge. You can have them hold there. Hook your thenar to the side of the mastoid so you can lift that occiput up. Lean them over. A little rotation. Arch the back. Relax everything. Right there. Often, as you clear one side, we're then listening to the tone. Often, it's not always occiput both sides. This is actually C5. C5 is going to be more posterior. And almost cradle, like starting to just circle. Then I come in, let that go. A lot more P to A. And then you be with them. Right there. It's lots of fun.
Mm-hmm. So let's go into how to find the primary, and then we'll let you guys break out and play.
You start.
Okay. So, whatever way, whether it's seated, side posture, I would probably on the ground, I wouldn't do prone, but whatever way that you can get the most access to their system being free, similar to what Dylan was talking about stacking, I like to just like basically show them you've got them and start adding motion to their body and feeling where the restriction is. So as I play up through him, through that mid-thoracic, I catch where he's having trouble moving. I can shift his pelvis in circles and help him kind of roll, help him sit back into it, where he really doesn't like that. So you're starting to feel where's the areas of the body that are catching tension and not allowing movement. So then, once you have a good read of the whole system, can I hold occiput and sacrum at the same time? You can do this in side posture too. And can I tune one enough to allow the other to open up? So for him, his occiput's actually decently clear. And as I'm trying to tune like pelvis and stuff, this doesn't have a whole lot of resonance. It's not really doing anything. So I'm going to assume there that because this is not influencing that, this is probably a lot more primary for him. And if I were to stack his occiput in a way that allows it to float better, right back there, does that change anything in the pelvis? Not really. So that right SI area for him, right low back, is holding the most engagement in his system and is taking up the most control for his system. So I would approach that first, allow the system to be more open for the other side. Mm-hmm. Back. Go on your back real quick. I want to show one more thing. So he mentioned that he has the transitional segment, which is why some of that bunching is happening and his system wouldn't fully clear there. So he has a transitional segment, meaning that that segment is osseously locked into another piece of his body. I find that L4, L5, especially with transitional segments, adjust better through the hip, through the iliolumbar ligament. So this is going to, flat on the ground is going to be primarily hip, and L5 is going to clear more with about 5 to 10 degrees of elevation. So in the same way that we were playing with the system, I'm adding different degrees of motion to feel where I get the most opening in his, you see his belly dropping right there? I'm right in L5. Dylan, flatten your lower back just a little bit. Good. So look at that. Opens right up. I can catch that myofascial engagement and pull through it, and it'll open up the L5. That's really good for transitional segments specifically. Does anybody have any questions? All right, why doesn't everybody find a partner? Let's start with an assessment. I would say if you can do it efficiently, do one side posture, one seated, and just start to feel the wave of the system and where it catches, and then identify which one's primary and start to play with that and try and open the system as much as you can from the primary. Okay, go ahead.
Check each other seated, standing.
Yeah.
You can do some squat analysis, just kind of like gain access to understanding. What do you see? What do you feel within the system?
And if you're getting stuck or you just want a set of eyes on it, just raise your hand, call us over.